So, I would like to discuss our corrupted government for a moment, very briefly. So, we are once again, as usual, throwing absurd amount of funds at the military. For those of you that aren't aware, it came time again to pass a new Pentagon budget for the fiscal year 2022. I believe this is the first one under President Biden. And I wanted to talk about it because I thought it was incredibly striking what we know about it now and some new information that I came across that really isn't new information, but it's new to me. And I thought it was incredibly interesting. So, first and foremost, what I want to do is show you this steady increase of our military budget, our Pentagon budget, over the years under our past couple of presidents. So, I'll throw this picture up on the screen right now. If you look under 2016, under President Obama, it was $612 billion. It increased to $619 billion under Obama in 2017. Then under Trump, we jumped to $700 billion. 716, 738, and it capped off at 740 for Trump. Now under Biden, it's 778. Now, I want to remind you that 7078 number wasn't Biden's initial proposal. It was actually about $25 billion less than that, but it was still an increase from what the previous budget was under Donald Trump. The insane House and Senate committees, Republicans and Democrats alike, decided that that wasn't enough when you adjusted for inflation, when you adjusted for what China's doing, the typical excuses to throw more money at the military. They added an extra $25 billion. It got approved by both committees. It went to the House for a vote. It'll probably go to the Senate for a vote sometime in October. And as you can see, it passed the House here. And it passed the House, get this, 316 to 113, with more Republicans voting against it than Democrats. 76 Republicans said nay, 37 Democrats said nay. Now, one could argue maybe this would be different under a Republican president. You may be correct in stating that, but nevertheless, it's still absolutely disgusting and unethical. Now, what I also want to point out is something that's, mildly important to state is that, this is a NDAA, okay, which means that it's a policy bill. And it's not a spending bill, meaning that if the final product has a top line of $778 billion, a separate appropriations bill with a matching dollar figure would also have to pass for the increase to become reality. A couple more facts for you. The military budget has gone roughly from $5 trillion over the course of 10 years to $8 trillion over the course of 10 years. The difference/increase is roughly the cost of the Biden domestic spending agenda. This is highlighted by Mr. Jeff Stein. Now, what I want to touch on as I end this is Jeff Stein wrote an article in 2018 where he essentially did somewhat of a deep dive into what America could do with the funds that they would accrue if they were to cut military spending. Now, this was spurred during the Trump administration when Trump basically berated NATO and our allies, our European allies, for not spending as much on military as we do. I know, insane, right? But the U.S., in terms of GDP, spends about 3.5% on the military. And our European allies, a lot of them don't even spend 2%. And Trump hated that, and he berated them for it and told them to spend more money. But as I said, Jeff Stein did a deep dive into this, and wanted to look at what we could afford if we were to spend under 2% or 2% or around 2% on our military. And the results were astonishing. Now, this is from 2018. In 2018, the United States spent $623 billion on national defense, which translates into about 3.5% of its gross domestic product, according to a report recently published by the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Now, cutting U.S. military spending from 3.5% of GDP to 2% would shave off about $300 billion from federal spending, or about $3 trillion over the next 10 years. Now, I'm going to highlight several things that could be done if that were to be the case. Number one, Universal preschool, debt-free college, and student debt jubilee. So we could get rid of student debt. We could make all college free, which is something that we advocate for, free college, universal college, and we could do universal preschool. Look at that. If we were to just cut the GDP, because the military spending that we spend on GDP, of course, this is from 2018. It was 3.5%. If we were to adjust that to 2%, we could have this. And they're actively choosing not to. I mean, this is their decisions. The military-industrial complex has our government by the balls, effectively. I mean, quite literally speaking. I'll go on. A key Trump and GOP agenda he highlights here. Of course, we don't want this, but Trump cut the corporate tax rate from 35 to 21%. If they were to cut back on military spending, he could cut that corporate tax rate to 15%. Of course, that's not what we want, but that is possible. Okay. Also, dramatic reduction in childhood poverty and homelessness. With an extra $3 trillion a year, some anti-poverty experts say the United States could take steps forward, ending child poverty and homelessness and creating a low-cost universal child care program. Wow. Once again, this is from 2018. I know we've had some development on these specific areas of legislation. Of course, most recently, I feel like it doesn't need to be stated. A deficit reduction. Cutting the U.S. military budget could also be redirected to paying down the growing federal deficit, according to budget experts. The annual federal deficit is about $833 billion, so a nearly $300 billion cut to military spending would cut that by about 35%. Health insurance for millions of Americans. The United States is facing a crisis in providing health care for seniors, and a growing number of families are unable to afford the escalating cost of care. Without getting too much into the weeds, we could have universal health care, Medicare for all, if we were to do what Jeff Stein is proposing in this article from 2018. Look, guys, the opportunities are endless. We spend so much money on the military. I've said it so many times. It can't be understated. It can't be overstated. I mean, we spend so much money for no apparent reason. We just threw away a couple $1 billion or a little bit over $1 billion over like this past decade. But most recently in this House vote to fund Israel's Iron Dome. Israel's a rich country. They can pay for it themselves. Why are we doing it? God knows why. And just the overall military expenditure that comes out of this country is so great and so needless that we're neglecting the problems here domestically. Our politicians love to champion the phrase America first. If they really wanted to put America first, they would take action such as the ones that I just highlighted in that article and not continue to authorize these insane bloated Pentagon budgets, due to the faux threat of the Chinese caravans that want to come and kill your dog.